Now, in the next segment, Paul, we're going to play some additional rather graphic audio, but I want the audience to hear what the DA says. These 50 witnesses that they interviewed have all come forward saying the same kind of thing, but you feel that it's adding more fuel to the fire.
Even your last statement that you just said is not correct.
Okay.
It doesn't say that 50 witnesses came forward and all accused him of sexual abuse. It says they interviewed 50 witnesses. You just said 50 women have basically come forward.
No, I didn't say women. I said 50 witnesses came forward. So they did.
All that means is it says that 50 witnesses were interviewed. That's all.
Okay, so when we come back,
came forward and said bad things.
Oh, I love this kind of a conversation because you know what? I love the yin and the yang because, Paul, you're going to be someone who's there as a criminal defense attorney. I understand that. And, you know, I want listeners to hear the way a man like Carlos Bustamante may be defended as this due process goes forward. But you say we're already cutting out due process, right?
No question about it.
All right.
And I want to repeat, when Tony Rackakis goes and does a news conference, he only does that to prejudice the possible jury pool.
All right,
Why would he otherwise do it?
Well, we're going to take a break. Look, stick with me because in the next segment, if you thought that what you heard right now is prejudicial against Bustamante, just wait till we play a couple of the more salacious, should we say, descriptions that the DA talked about in a press conference today. This is David Cruz, K-Talk, AM 1150. Look, we're getting so much information on the charges against Carlos Bustamante, the former public works manager down there in Orange County and now a city councilman in Santa Ana, that I needed to have somebody help me digest some of these charges because, I mean, there are several. So I've invited Paul J. Wallin, attorney, criminal defense attorney, to join us and, you know, explain some of the maze. But before I bring him back, or in fact, let me bring you back now, Paul, and have you listen to the DA. And I want to warn my audience, there is some strong language here, not because it's profanity, but because the DA was describing in more detail some of the things that Bustamante is accused of having done. Go.
Once they arrived, he cornered them by closing the door behind them, and then he hugged them. And he kissed their mouths and their necks, and during this time they would explain that they were shaking their heads and trying to avoid being kissed by him. He rubbed his face against theirs, he grabbed their breasts, he touched their bare thighs, moved his hands up toward their vaginas on the upper part of the leg, under skirts sometimes, grabbed their buttocks, exposed himself, and he even masturbated in front of his victims on a number of occasions.
Paul, that's pretty graphic. What do you think about that?
If the allegations are true, and if in fact he did the things that these women allegedly claim he did, it is disgusting, and he should be severely punished for what he did. But that's the issue. You know what this is so far, right? It's a district attorney reading from a piece of paper, and the defense, and he has had no chance whatsoever to defend himself. I guess the most important thing I could just ask you and your viewers, just one thing. If you were accused of these crimes, say 3 women even accused you, that you worked in the office, and all this publicity comes out, and people are already assuming you were guilty, you would have to understand you could never get a fair trial if that's the general gist, and that's what I'm telling you.
What about fairness?
What about the other witnesses are saying?
What about fairness for the women, though? I mean, what about the victims or the alleged victims? What about their rights? What about that?
Well, first of all, as you pointed out, they're alleged victims, and if in fact he is convicted and they come to court and he's found guilty, they will have the right to go to court and talk to the judge.
But wait a second. May I ask you this, Paul, because you're an attorney, you've been doing this a long time. How long have you been practicing criminal law, please?
35 years.
Okay, so about the same time that I've been a journalist. So let me ask you this question. Do you know how difficult, I'm sure you do, it is for these women to have to be humiliated, to have to go into court, to, if you will, tell these stories, their faces out there? How would you like it if it was your wife or your loved one being put in that position?
It is not an easy thing to do at all. But you know what? That's our Constitution. A person has the right to be confronted by their accuser before they can be sentenced to jail or be found guilty. And I reverse it and ask you, if you were accused of something you did not do, don't you think it would be fair that the person would have to come into court and tell what
Here's what I do think. I'm going to answer your question. When you're in a public position, you know going in that if you jaywalk and somebody gets that on the internet, there will be critics over that. So, and I make that not to try and be funny, because it probably is not. But, I mean, when you're in a public office like the position that this man held with so many people reporting to him, when you're a city council member, you know going in that there's going to be a spotlight on you, Paul. That's what I do believe. So, too, with me being here on this microphone.
You're 100% right, and you are held to a higher standard, and you should be held to a higher standard. I'm not here defending someone who has, in fact, done some horrible things. I'm defending a person's right to not be judged by the media, not be judged by supervisors. Supervisor Morlock is quoted in the Orange County Register as saying, "We have to make sure this never happens again," as if it's already been done.
Yeah, no, I get you. I get you, and I think you made a very good point.
That's fair in our society, or why do we even have a government that says you have the right to be presumed innocent? And I go back. If you were accused of a crime, I assure you, you would want the same presumption of innocence that this man has.
Paul, you do a wonderful job defending someone who is in this situation, this pickle. Let's go to a description now given by the DA, and I know that you're going to say it may be too much, but let's listen to some additional things, and I warn you again, it is strong language.
When they attempted to escape from the office, he cornered them to prevent them from leaving. He pinned them against walls, hugged them tightly, close enough, the victims described, that as he was hugging and squeezing them, that they could feel his erect penis through the clothes. They struggled to get away. Many of his victims believed that Bustamante's office was soundproofed, and that if they screamed, nobody would hear him anyway.
Paul, with as much time as you have had dealing with criminal charges, and maybe you've had charges like this that you've had to defend people against, here's my question to you. Walk in the shoes of these women, and again, alleged victims, but walk in their shoes. Some women are already coming forward because some third party named them in an anonymous letter to authorities, named them, and now they either have to say, yes, he did this to me, and face the possibility of their information getting out, or denying it. That's like a no-win situation. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with you that some women will definitely be fearful of coming forward for fear of retribution. However, in this case, since it's already public, and since he's being prosecuted, they have nothing to fear, and I would strongly urge any woman who's been violated to definitely come forward and report it, because it never should happen. But one fear I do have, you said earlier that these women, or the DA said, they would come into his office because they would be summoned there. Well, every day, hundreds of thousands of employees are summoned into their employers' offices, and they're not molested. I don't want to have everyone fearful now that if they're going to go into their boss's office, they're going to be molested. If this guy has a problem with doing these things, as I told you, and he's convicted, and he gets a fair trial, he should be punished severely. And I told you, he'll have to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. Basically, his life will be ruined, and all the victims will get their pound of flesh, because he'll go to prison for many years for this kind of conduct. Because, as you said, he definitely would have violated a very high position of trust.
Yes, in fact.
That's why people do go to prison.
Yeah, that's
I'm only saying to you is, don't convict him on your radio show. Don't convict him because Tony Rakakis wants to make some political heyday and gets him arrested right before a city council meeting to try to prejudice the jury pool, which ironically...
Well, you don't know if... Now, come on now, Paul. Let's use it the same way. You don't know if that's exactly why he did it. You don't know.
Could you tell me why else would he do it?
No. Now you're reversing the question on me. I like that, man. I want to hire you if I ever have to. And I better not face charges like this. My wife would kill me. That's what I'd have to first do. Hey, Paul... I really want to thank you for taking time. We've been listening to Paul J. Wallin. He is a criminal defense attorney, and you can see why. 35-year veteran, very familiar with these cases. I want to keep you on my short list of people to get on, and because you get my blood pressure moving on these things. All right?
Well, that's good. It'll keep your heart rate down.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We've been talking to Paul J. Wallin. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to put a link to his website, because the way I came upon him was because I saw the letter that he sent the Orange County Register, but also he explains a lot of the charges that are now swirling around Carlos Bustamante. KTLK AM1150.com. You'll see the link there to attorney Paul J. Wallin, criminal defense attorney. That's one guy I hope I never have to meet in his office, ever, especially behind a closed door.